Welcome back, everybody, to episode what? Jeez, what is this now?
14.
14? I think, yeah.
I have though.
Episode 14. We've been getting into a little bit of a roll, a cadence.
Indeed.
I'm enjoying it.
You too, man. I'm just happy to see you every week, bro.
Yeah, it's fun.
You go from like working with a person every day, then like seeing them like once every 7 months, and then you just go back to seeing them weekly. This is a cadence that works for me.
But that's the funny thing about, people who generalize male friendships.
Indeed.
It's like we pick up like nothing happened,
Absolutely. I always under just like, hey man, you all right? You breathing? All right.
Oh, so what's been going on in your world, man?
Man, it's been an interesting situation. A lot of change, a lot of uncertainty, but I think these are the times where I'm happy I just have a grounding in my skill set. It kind of gives me an understanding that no matter what changes or what happens, that the skill set will take care of everything else going forward, at least from a technical perspective, if that's the question you're asking. I've been dabbling in like some like weird new stuff. Like I'm about to start like a Salesforce developer. Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, I want a low touch technical skill.
Got you.
Low touch technical skill. Most of the recs I see
What
for
do you mean by low
Salesforce,
touch?
I mean like drag and drop, point and click. So it was either that or like CI/CD.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're both pretty. I don't know if I'd say CI/CD is low touch.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty involved at a certain point. Even Salesforce development gets pretty involved at a certain level.
Yeah.
But I think I get what you're saying. Just something that, like, being able to specialize in a specific type of tool.
Exactly.
Got you.
Yeah, that's the main focus. How about you, man?
And I've just been interested and obsessing over how apps are deployed, and it trails over every episode because it's something that I just keep working on.
Okay.
It's like there's this different story between how individuals that are building apps will go and deploy their application, and then how companies, organizations, big enterprises do it.
Yeah.
And I find myself just like jumping in between these camps.
Like there has to be a way to mend the two. There has to be a way to give you the efficiency and the security that a large firm would request. Excuse me, and the flexibility and versatility, I guess, like a better term, that a solo developer, a startup, a fresher team would be able to implement in releasing code.
Yeah, I think there is. That's what I'm very much so interested in, like taking the best of both worlds. Because, like, in an enterprise, there's just a lot more concerns that you have, legal concerns, different policies that are required for, oftentimes, legal reasons, or just to make sure we don't mess up. Because if we mess up, it messes up a lot more people than if you're just working at a smaller scale startup or building something personally. But there's some stuff that these products really nail that are centered towards kind of that more individual experience
Okay.
that I think are really good.
Such as?
The understanding and feeling that you as the engineer are the customer, are what's being focused on. And so the things that matter to you are at your fingertips, right? Like, you think about, I've been thinking about this as a whole, like Heroku.
I've heard that word
Are you
before.
familiar with Heroku a little bit?
Yeah. Like
They've been around for a minute.
That was deep in the mental Rolodex for Heroku. Yeah.
Like they're probably one of the older players in this space of like, hey, just come to us and you can deploy your app and it's super easy and we'll take care of all this infrastructure stuff for you. You don't have to. But it didn't really see as big of success in the enterprise space.
Okay.
because there wasn't enough customization. There wasn't enough ability for the enterprise to take what Heroku was offering and put their custom things on it that they needed.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have players like, Vercel on the front end. It'll take your React app, your Vue app, whatever, and deploy it across this kind of global infrastructure type of deal,
Mm-hmm.
which that's really cool. And then you have players too like Railway. All of these are kind of centered towards more the individual engineer up front. And I like that story.
Okay.
It resonates with me just because of some historical elements, like when AWS was first becoming a thing, AWS being Amazon's cloud, blah, blah, blah. When AWS was first becoming a thing, they were centered towards developers, towards engineers. Now, as they grew, as they got larger, they had to kind of go back and put on these enterprise-grade features
Yeah.
as more enterprises adopted them, and they they adapted rather, changed, grew, did what they had to do.
Yeah.
But like when I go back to the example of like Heroku, at least from outside looking in, they didn't adapt as well. They kept centered towards this market of the individual dev, and they tried in the enterprise space, it seemed like, but it just wasn't as much success. I believe they got acquired, I think, by Salesforce.
Oh, okay.
I think for like a couple $100 million. Here, let me look it up. Let's see. What was it? Heroku acquisition. Yeah, by
Yeah.
Salesforce. Back in 2010. For $212 million is what it says. And Heroku is like, I mean, they've been doing this story for a long time. But there's a ton of reasons. Like I said, all that little enterprise stuff that's required, why Heroku couldn't really be adopted en masse, because I don't really think anybody loves having to manage their own infrastructure. So my question jumps into next, what's that middle ground? What's the in between, right? How do you expose the key tenets that enterprises are interested in maintaining themselves and being able to manipulate themselves that are critical for them and their business? How do you capture 80% of that
Mm-hmm.
and also build an experience that is delightful to developers? It's consuming my mind.
Well, from a super non-technical perspective, it's an interesting concept because it doesn't challenge, but it redistributes or repositions a thought in product development, like called the law of the customer, and finding new service. I think that's kind of where, or what'll drive innovation is finding new customers. Like every business is always in the look for new customers. How can we apply to new user bases? But the idea of viewing your internal developers as customers can allow you to move forward and move through different innovation in a way that benefits the company. So I guess I've never. Do you see any other opportunities for that? And maybe we can get back to the whole the platform piece of it as far as a deployment. But are there any other thoughts that when you think of seeing the developer as a customer of services, what else enterprises could be looking to give them or looking to assist there?
Well, I was actually having a little bit of this discussion today. What I lean towards is organizations should be viewing what they're building, this platform of sorts that they're building, to abstract infrastructure away as a product. I think it should be thought of as a product. That way you can apply all of the product development things we've learned over the years, and your customer, as defined, should be your internal developers. They have specific needs, and there should always be this driving of, I'm trying to delight my customer.
Yeah. Improve the system.
and what impacts that would cause. Like, what actually are the positives of that? I think, in just off the top of my head, you're definitely going to increase productivity in the sense that you're able to deliver key components faster.
Absolutely.
You're also, there's the kind of non-tangible, keeping your developers happy, just retention in general, not burning them out as easily, because they can go and work and be creative and not have to deal with the mind-numbing minutia of infrastructure in the way that they shouldn't have to, you know. Those are just a couple key items, but I think they should focus on just building something that serves developers, that gives them this ability to create, and don't make it so complicated. Like, I like actually these 5 tenants. There's this, I think we talked about it a little bit on one of the podcasts, but there's already this whole ideal around internal developer platforms that I really like. Right. And there's kind of 5 core capabilities that any internal development platform needs. And it breaks it down here pretty nicely. App config management, manage application configuration in a dynamic, scalable, and reliable way. Great. Infrastructure orchestration, orchestrate your infrastructure in a dynamic, intelligent way, blah, blah, blah. Environment management, deployment management, all with role-based access control kind of baked in throughout. These are 5 core capabilities, they say components here, of an internal developer platform. Now, the tools that we talk about a lot of times, CI/CD, specific tools, tools like Terraform, Vault, Kubernetes, like, they all play in specific areas of these 5 capabilities. But your platform is made up of a ton of these different tools, right, used to then provide this specific capability to developers. That's how I would think about it. And when I'm talking with customers, it helps because they're not even aware a lot of the time that what they're trying to do is build an internal developer platform.
Yeah.
They don't
They
don't
just
understand.
see it as a bunch of patchwork that allows them to eventually release.
Yeah. And they are just solving one problem at a time and trying to do it. But what ends up happening is, because they're solving one problem at a time, they're not really building towards the ideal of, or enabling self-service, so developers can come and actually get this infrastructure themselves. So what ends up happening is they then own each component, and all requests for that has to still be routed through their team, and they're still the bottleneck. So it like just puts load on that team constantly.
Exactly.
And there's no way out of it. Like, you have to, now you're building the platform and having to maintain it and do everything without having self-service and fulfill the requests. It's like, it's a wild combination of things. So this team in that type of organization ends up growing and growing and growing and being bigger and bigger and bigger. Instead of, hey, we could keep the core team to a reasonable level, enable self-service so that they can create these things themselves. I don't have to manually go and trigger this for them to have that capability. And then we can work on deeper levels of automation and security that we bake into the platform. Essentially, then we can focus on features of the platform type of thing.
So let's say you're a developer at a company. How would you go about looking to make these changes or advocate for these changes within your own company? Is it a matter of picking the correct technologies that currently exist? Is it a matter of creating communities of practice and hoping that you can get enough sign-off and enough people to affect change in how the standards are met within the enterprise?
That's an interesting question. As a developer, I think you're in a weird position because you're kind of at the mercy of what's already there. Like, if you develop these skill sets and you understand infrastructure and automation and things like that, you'll end up taking on some more infrastructure automation tasks, cloud-oriented tasks, etc. on your team. But there's really already, most likely, teams that are trying to focus on solving these types of problems, and they're just not going about it in a way that is truly scalable to all of these teams, right? So you kind of got to get an idea of the landscape around you, like what teams are working on what, how do I interface and understand who is in that department or on that team, and then work closely with those people to figure out what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll kind of be able to start maneuvering around a little bit more with ease. But if you don't do that and you just stay at the mercy of what's available, then you'll be put in very confined boxes of what you're going to do. Yeah.
Do you find that when you have these discussions with companies, they're taking in the input from their developers, or that there's somebody, you love the term ivory tower, but there's somebody at the top who's making solidified, singular decisions for the rest of the enterprise based on what they believe to be correct? Because I asked that question because a lot of the things we've discussed on this topic has been a matter of pain points when we don't see our developers as a customer and we're not iterating on software, iterating the process to assist them. But as a developer, like you mentioned, my hands are kind of tied based on what we have here. So where do we inject that change?
I've seen it happen both ways, where there's someone at the top making a decision. Usually how it happens is a similar way. So we'll start from how it usually seems to happen. Is the company didn't hit some sort of metric or number they wanted to. Mm-hmm. Some executive looks around and is like, "Oh, we aren't agile. We don't have enough ability to adapt to market demands and push software quickly enough to respond to our customers' needs." Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And they'll talk and they'll make a fuss, and then they'll be like, okay, so what are the bottlenecks? What are the hurdles? Well, maybe we have all this infrastructure we're managing on premise and it's really slow. Maybe we can move to the cloud. People seem to be doing that. That's moving faster. Like they get into a room, they start talking about it, right? And eventually, there'll be some initiatives that spawn from that.
KPIs.
Yeah, and they'll say, all right, so all new workloads we're going to send to the cloud. Yep. And they think that's going to help them move faster. Yeah. And then they figure out that's not what's going to help them move faster.
So it's like similar to like you mentioned, we're not agile enough. Let's hire 10 Scrum Masters and start having daily stand-ups.
Yeah.
And they expect things to we're doing the thing. We're doing Agile. We're having the meetings. So why are they not moving faster?
Yeah. No, unfortunately, I won't say all of them, but a lot of folks in that space of being an executive have lost a bit of touch with what it means to actually build these things nowadays and what's important. And so I don't even think it's not like they're trying to not be good at it.
Yeah.
It's just they don't know. You start to lose what questions you should even be asking, how to even push back on certain things. You hear about new tech, and tech's always changing, so it's just this constant thing of trying to keep up and understand. It's hard. I get it. But the teams that do it right, the teams that actually do it right, they get the initiative and they're like, okay, how do we figure this out? Mm-hmm. And they decide we're going to build something that abstracts these key infrastructure components, these key capabilities, because it's something all application teams need. And we're going to try and make it in a way that promotes self-service so that they can consume it on their own, similar to if they went to a cloud provider or something like that. Right? Those teams are at least pushing towards the right direction, because now they're making design decisions to kind of push towards that end goal. Even if in the beginning your platform team or whatever team had to take those requests still and fulfill them manually because you don't have a certain piece automated or you don't have certain policies automated.
Yeah.
You can do that, but you know what you're building towards.
Exactly.
And the people that don't do it right, they don't even think of it as a product at all. And so now they end up being the largest bottleneck in any organization and the largest cost center, which I don't know, I just feel like the largest amount of cost for development should probably be put towards developers. This instinction, I don't know. I feel like
that
that's
makes sense.
the people that are building features. We should have as many of those people as possible.
Yeah,
And the infrastructure side is a need.
absolutely.
We need it, but it should be able to be managed in a way that takes a team of, 10, 15 people maybe, tops. And then the rest could be put towards everything else and building out products that actually kind of bring in money.
Kind of.
And they should. Or say, these companies are weird.
Yeah.
I want to build a product that it either makes us money or saves us money.
Yeah, reduces the risk.
Or whatever.
Different things of that nature. I was playing. I know what you're talking about. That's interesting, though.
Kind of. I'm kind of in this in-between space about it. Like, we're in a place where the market doesn't understand that they're even building these internal development platforms yet. Even though every customer I bring it up with and I'm talking to them about it, they're like, oh, yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Yeah, that's what we're doing. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. This is what you're doing.
Yeah.
You should realize this is what you're doing. But it's really just each one of these components of this internal developer platform are usually managed by different people, different teams, and are just there because they're needed, right? I don't know. I think it's something that we can solve. It's just not where I'd like to see it yet, right
Gotcha.
now.
Well, that's fair.
That's been what's on my mind. Other than that, just looking around at everything. I know we were talking about like the layoffs and everything going on.
Yeah, I saw a news article coming from Microsoft along the lines of no bonuses, no pay raises coming for the year of 2023. And it's so interesting because a lot of the companies in tech that are doing these massive layoffs are the namesake companies, and so it's kind of like freaking people out. It's the FANG. It's just saw a lot of different things up on that screen as far as the companies that are like inherently tech based. Like you think about, like I said, Grindr. You think about like a dating app. Like what else between Grindr and Tinder do they do but software? Their entire business is software.
Yeah.
Zoom, their entire business is software.
Yeah, everybody's been laying off. I mean, I know I looked at Google, Amazon, Microsoft, like it's kind of just across the board.
It's a cold winter.
My company had layoffs not too long ago. Like,
Same.
it's just having like January, really 84,000 employees. February 36,000. March 37,000. April 17,000. Like,
So it looks like it's stopping. But I'll tell you this because
slowing down,
slowing down. But I've done like some research on just like looking at people as they put in like resumes for stuff. People aren't getting calls back from these companies. So if they're cutting these different things. What do you think that means for the job market in tech as a whole? Because now it's just supply versus demand. There's so many people available now.
I think it's a tough situation. I think the market as a whole, there are a lot more people available. And there are a lot of jobs still out there that are listed. Who is actually hiring and who is not, I think is a question. It's kind of in between space because
Who's just collecting resumes for the third quarter when they get their budgets back and they could just start pushing again.
That's always going to be a thing. That was a thing even before layoffs.
Yeah.
Like companies just putting out job recs without actually intending to hire people.
Facts.
But I think this is it makes sense. Like when you look at everything that's happened at a macroeconomic level and how it all trickles down, like, I don't know if we'll get dinged for even talking about it, but anytime there's a war or anything, like
we're far enough into the podcast to where the
cool.
algorithm shouldn't ding us for it.
Great. Like
using the W word.
There's a war. Certain things happen. And tech is one of the first spaces in all of those times that are hit the hardest.
Fair.
Like it's just one of those things that happens. Technology, and what spikes up is all of the war-related industries like manufacturing, weapons companies, things like that. That as, and the opposite happens when the economy is booming.
Yeah.
Tech is up.
New products,
Those
new projects
products are down. It's kind of how
ride the
stuff
wave.
flows. So my thing is, a lot of these companies still that are providing services, whether that be just through software or a combination of physical goods and software, they're still selling stuff. They're still making money. Like, they may not be making as much. They're probably going to have to cut back, but I would just use this time as a time to up your skill set, continue maintaining your craft as a craftsman and being the best at what you can be, at what you can do.
I think the world as a whole I think I've said it here before, but I know I say it all the time. I'm a fan of like universal logic. So if something makes sense in a linear form, there should be aspects of this that I can apply to other things. It may not be one-to-one, but I should be able to apply the general guidelines and guardrails of this logic point. Logic tells us, although they haven't used the word yet, whether you're talking from a fiscal or financial perspective, multiple quarters with negative GDP. So that technically defines a recession, but they haven't said the word recession yet. Yeah. Anybody who's going to buy grocery stores knows inflation's at a ridiculous amount right now. People are feeling the stretch. So what do people normally do in recessions, right? They hunker down, they cut expenses, they focus on the things that will get them through, and they find other ways to pull in money and pull in revenue so that they can float until the world kind of turns right side up again. I see no way reasonable world that we shouldn't be doing the same thing as far as our tech careers in this moment. If you realize, like, if you work for an enterprise, like for me example, and they go, hey, we're on a hiring freeze, that's like first ding. Because what effectively they're saying is there's a war going on outside no one's safe from. Barricade the doors. No one comes in, no one goes out. This is how we stay safe. So now, if let's say this is here's a crazy comparison. Let's say it's a zombie apocalypse, right? We would do the same thing, right? We would board the doors. All right. Now, if I know that there's zombies outside, the world's going crazy, am I just going to be sitting here going like, all right, well, everything's cool? No, I'm probably going to find the nearest stake and do some sharpening just in case that wall breaks down. I'm probably going to make sure, okay, we got the canned foods, we got the first aid kits in case I do get bit. All right, if I do get bit, how am I going to lie to G that I'm not bit so he don't kill me because I'm a zombie now? These are the things I have to be thinking in advance at this point, right? Same exact thing goes. Recognize the signs, find new ways. I mean, like, that's a part of the reason now I'm interested in that whole Salesforce developer thing. Because what happens in the world where they go, hey, man, we don't need you anymore. I want to make sure I diversify my skill set and make sure I'm applicable and I'm up to date in current market trends. And just because, like, there might not be any inward mobility now, like where I work, there's no inward mobility at the moment because they're trying to protect their employees. That doesn't mean that I don't want to get caught slipping when the time comes. Because there is no ramp up period. When the switch flips, the switch is going to flip. They're going to be like, hey, doors are open. Let's go outside and enjoy the sunshine. Let's go make some money. Let's go do some things. And that's not the time where I want to go, oh, man, now that we're up, I should learn a new skill set. Oh, now that we're outside again, It was like the pandemic. Yeah. It was just like, hey, if you weren't doing push-ups in your bedroom or you weren't trying to find a way to do something and then the world opened back up, you was outside like, oh, man, I haven't been out here in a while. I wish I would have taken the time to do the thing now.
It was a great time to level up.
Exactly.
In multiple different ways.
And so it's the same. Like if you look at, let's say like the last large-scale recession that the U.S. would probably be that 2007 through 2009-ish. Housing crisis where the recession hit. But if you look at the companies that were spurred as a result of it, the Netflixes, the Chipotles, like all these businesses that got built in terms or during the time period of that recession. So it is possible. We can hunker down, find new skills, find new business value, and then be ready so that when we're in a position to share it again, we're not trying to find ideas. We're trying to refine ideas. We're just trying to get it to the market faster.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think people need to be a bit proactive for sure at this time. Understand what's going on. Understand how marketable your skills are currently.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big one that I think people just don't pay attention to. Like, don't just understand what you do for your company. Understand how valuable that skill is to other companies.
And if you want a true idea or a thought as to how you can do that, type your role into like LinkedIn, into Indeed, Glassdoor, any of these
Dice.
sites.
I like Dice
I like
randomly,
Dice too. And look at average age of job posting. If you search something and the first thing that pops up is like 10 days old, and there's 10 days old, 10 days old, 25 days old, 20 days old, 30 days old, they're not hiring in your profession. They just have these recs out because they probably need to. Now, depending if you see jobs constantly spawning, constantly new recs being open, that tells you that there's a wider view or a wider need for your skill set.
See, I never really looked at the time of the job post. What I always did was type in the job name per my location. And then I would see how many jobs generally were available. And like if there was 350 plus jobs in my locale that were available, then I would be like, okay, it's a decently high demand-ish
Yeah, that
skill.
makes sense.
If there was only like 50 or something or less, then I'd be like, it's not as high demand. Or what I found was it's very niche,
Yeah.
and there's not as many people who can even fulfill those types of roles. So like, I've never thought about the amount of days, but I would always like, I'll go on LinkedIn jobs, the specific jobs tab in LinkedIn, or Dice. I use those two mainly, and I'll type in different like adjacent jobs. So like my main job is developer advocate. So I'll type that in. I'll see how many are there, and then I know my skill sets though that I could market towards different jobs. So I look at like back-end software engineer, Golang software engineer, like full stack software engineer. Or I'll type in Node.js or like different things that I know my skill set aligns to see like how could I make something shake in a weird situation.
You know, that's a really good point too, because what you'll find oftentimes is that the company that's hiring is either just throwing a whole bunch of stuff at a wall and like hoping that it sticks and they pull somebody out of it, or they don't really know what it is they're asking for. Or like, I'll tell you, for example, like in Agile, if I look up Scrum Master, I'll probably get, let's say in my area, 100 opportunities that are relatively newer, right? We'll walk into that 350 if like we're spanning the whole thing. But it's just like, but after you get into like the 50 and 60 and you're scrolling through those different opportunities, you're starting to realize like you don't really want a Scrum Master. This is just the word you've chosen to use. So then if you search Agile, if you search the certification, like I have, like I've said, a mastery level certification in SAFe. I can certify, I can teach executives all these different things. I searched SPC one day and got business analyst. I said, that's odd that business analyst is typically an entry level position. I clicked the business analyst role and it's just like, you would need your PMP, you would need your CSP, you would need your SP. I'm like, why are you requiring these? I don't know if you know what you're hiring for. So, but that's one of the things. At least now I can make the decision if I want to have the conversation with them or not. Because who knows? Maybe I'm the one in the dark. Maybe they do want to pay a business analyst $200,000. Hey,
maybe
I'll be the BA making that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because the things you're asking for, that skill set comes with some money attached to it. So it's always interesting to, like you mentioned, kind of pick apart, see the adjacent jobs. Don't, hey, I've been a software engineer for some time, and then search for software developer. I don't know. It's like weird. People use different terms, and you won't have full access to the full slate if you're not creatively thinking in this interview process.
And if you're an engineer, as an example, like you may know certain languages, like type in the language itself.
Facts.
So like I said, I'll type in just Golang sometimes just to see what's out there. And there'll be a bunch of different titles that pop up that all require Golang. Or I'll type in GCP for Google Cloud Platform because I have a cert with that, or AWS to see what like specific people are hiring for AWS or Azure or GCP, etc. And so I just want to get an idea of what skill sets are in demand and what adjacent skills are attached to those roles.
Yeah.
So I can understand what I'm strong at, what I'm weak at. Then you can focus your learning on the track that you want to get those jobs.
Yeah.
So look at the job, say, okay, how much does this job make? Does it make how much that I want to make? And then I even would have like 2 or 3 resumes for the jobs that I want, like the titles that I want and what they say they're looking for. So I have my one general resume that I'll send in all the time. But if I'm really going hard and looking for jobs, I have 3 resumes targeting 3 different titles, and I'll build out those resumes to be specific for those titles. Mm-hmm. And then send those out and have the recruiters like circulating those specifically.
What are your vibes on recruiters? Now, mind you, like we talked about, we have some upcoming episodes. We plan to have some recruiters as a part of the show because I feel people either like fly one way or the other. Nobody's lukewarm or neutral on recruiters. How do you feel about recruiters as a developer?
I might be, I guess, the weird lukewarm person. I think that some of them are very, very annoying and aren't good at their job. And I think that some of them are great, like great assets to have in your corner working with you. So if you meet a recruiter, all right, well, let's break this down from the beginning. So if you have a email come through or you have a LinkedIn message, mainly all my stuff goes through LinkedIn now. So I'll have recruiters hop in my DMs and be like, hey, blah, 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 there's a job. Now, there's a few different types of recruiters that pop in your DMs. There's the recruiter that actually works for the company that's trying to hire you for. They're like a full-time employee.
Yep.
Those are like kind of probably your premium level recruiters.
Absolutely.
So usually I give them like a little more time, but I have the same thing that I say to all recruiters. Up front, I say the same exact thing. It's like a template I say to everybody. So, but they're like the premium level. Then you have the people that they're a company that represents another company. Mm-hmm. So they're like, I have a client that's trying to hire for XYZ, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so my first question to those folks, before I even hit them with the template, is who's the company?
Have to.
Because a lot of times they don't want to tell you because they're afraid you're going to go and like apply directly through their site and circumvent them and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm not trying to do any of that. But if you can't tell me the company, how am I supposed to tell you if I'm interested?
And to that point, you want to know what gets annoying locally? Charlotte's a really big bank town.
Yep.
I work for the largest bank in Charlotte. And I work alongside our hiring department. I do some of our interviews. I help assist in those things. So I'll get I know our core locations. I know all these things. I'll get a LinkedIn message where it's just like one of our largest financial clients is looking for an Agile coach. They'd have to sit in Charlotte or Plano, or I'm like, okay, so it sounds like the bank. And they're also requiring hybrid work, 3 days in office. I was like, okay, that definitely sounds like the bank. What's the job? Oh, this is a release train engineer. All right, man, do you realize that I'm a release train engineer at the bank?
Thank you. Now you're talking about the worst type of recruiter.
Dog, read my profile. Don't
just doesn't do any research, that just spams a bunch of people that have certain keywords in their profile, and it doesn't care about their craft at all. I just end up sending, I used to get those a ton. Less now for some reason. I don't know why. But I would get that all the time. And I still get the occasional random one about like, I got one asking about being a SQL developer, and that was like 4 or 5 jobs ago for me at this point. So I just don't respond a lot of times to those. But usually now I'm representing a company, or more times than not, I'm a recruiter from the company that I'm hiring for. In those cases, the template is simple, like, oh, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your time. I think it's good to just be polite up front, even if you're annoyed by recruiters all the time. It just sets a better precedent. And then I'll say, here, I'll pull up one, so I'm not reciting
So
from
as
memory.
you're pulling this up, just a thought also for our job seekers, when the recruiters contact you, ask them about local meetups, local events, and network, whether it's virtually or it's in person, because a large pool that they received, oftentimes recruiters will work with hiring managers so that they can bring everybody into one spot. So even in the event that, hey, I might not like the role that they're offering, you'll meet a lot of people within the industry. You'll meet hiring managers directly because they'll oftentimes host them for the recruiters will host them for the hiring managers, and it'll help put face to name in the event that you're able to move forward. So just a thought.
Makes sense. I have a lot of these to look through. I'm trying to find the one that I liked. Most of the time, like this, I get a lot of these now where they know what I'm going to ask, and so they just give it to me. So I'm a recruiter. I'm recruiting a developer advocate position for a company, whatever. And then in the lines, it's like, okay, remote plus async, greater than 200K base plus equity. Like that's in the thing, because what I always send back is, what's the company if you didn't tell me already? And what's the compensation structure? Just so I can gauge if it makes sense for us to talk.
Exactly.
It used to be a little different. And when I would ask the compensation before I had the experience that I have now, sometimes I would get the recruiter to push back a little bit and was like, oh, we don't, share the compensation number. What are you looking for? Blah, blah, blah. And they don't do that anymore at this point.
Yeah.
A lot. But I think when you're earlier in your career, they try you with that stuff.
Absolutely.
A lot more, so my recommendation at that point is, and what I would say at that point is, hey, I'm asking just so I can know if it's worth us spending time having a conversation. If you can't let me know the range, that's fine, but I think it's probably best we don't proceed forward.
I'll share this recruiter message I received. It's from I'm going to say her name because I'm really appreciative of her. So if you get an email, a LinkedIn message from a Susan Bennett, shout out to Susan, because I really appreciated this LinkedIn message she sent. I'm hiring for 3 different release train engineers at blank place of work. Please read the entire description below. If you are a fit, please send me your resume. Must be able to work on W-2. We are not accepting anyone on visa. And then she goes, if you are a C2C candidate or a vendor, I ask that you please do not waste either of our time and do not email me. Facts. Like these are the things that help progress, because I'm reading through this now. I'm just like, no. But at the same time, I'm just like, thank you. Because at least I know, and it doesn't seem like you're just, and I understand why. A lot of recruiter business is based on just conversation and interaction. The more people I speak to, the better chance I have. She clearly strikes me as a person who is doing well from a recruiter standpoint because she's looking for targeted interactions. I don't want to just talk to you. So I'm appreciative of that.
No, I think
I
it's
want more
great.
people to do that.
If you find a recruiter that you like, and I've had this.
Shout out to Marty too. We're gonna have Marty on.
There's been a few recruiters that I actually really like, and I've worked with them exclusively for set periods of time. Like I literally had this the other day where the same rec was sent to me by like 3 different recruiters. And I responded to the recruiter I liked the most. That actually did the research, understood the job, like was prompt in answering the questions and all that stuff. Like he took his business very seriously. Mm-hmm. And so I'll make a note of recruiters like that and kind of in my network that I appreciate or that I like. And so if I'm trying to make a move at any time, I'll reach out to those ones specifically.
Exactly.
Now it's a little weird just because a lot more of the recs come from company-specific recruiters.
Yeah.
But I still have a few of like third-party recruiters that I still contact if I'm looking for another job.
Word.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Just pay attention.
Good connections to have.
Oh, definitely. Recruiters that are good will save you so much headache.
Yeah.
Like, and I think once you get to a certain level of mastery of your craft, you're an asset for them as well.
Exactly.
Right? Like, it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. They know how much you're expecting to make and that you need to make. They're a lot of times willing to make concessions on how much they might make on you.
Yeah.
And like they will be your biggest advocate
Exactly.
if you prove that you're a master of your craft, and they can move you from place to place.
I was having lunch with a recruiter, and me and him talk pretty often. And literally just talking at lunch, he goes, "Oh, actually, I have a new rec. You said you were looking for a coaching rec at the time." I was just like, "Yeah." He was like, never mind.
Yeah.
I said, "Really?" He was just like, "You don't want to be a part of that." I didn't read the whole thing. You don't want to be a part of that. I was just like, "See, so like when you learn, and those are the things, so that now when people come to me, like I literally have a conversation with tomorrow morning with somebody who's looking to make a transition to being a Scrum Master. I go, hey, now that you have your certifications, now that you've went through certain things, I'm going to send your information here. And then that'll be a large step. I don't just send to random people. I want to have that connection. That's truthfully speaking why I get so many LinkedIn emails, because my LinkedIn status, although hidden, is open to work. I'm having no intention to leave where I am, but I remember what it was like to be an entry-level Scrum Master. I remember what it was like to have 1 or 2 years of experience. And I'm just like, hey, man, I am looking for a new job. And they're just like, no, we're not even going to talk to you. So now that I got some skin in the game, everybody want to talk to me.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to pass you through to the next dude. Like, I'm just going to be like, hey, man, thanks for the call. But you know who is actually looking? My mans. So then we can pass. I could just kind of be a bridge in that viewpoint.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's a good way to pay it forward. I don't know, man. It's a weird environment. There's still a lot of money to be made in tech. It's still a lot of, even I would say, ways to break in and make your way, but it's
I would say it's
hard,
easier
like
to break
always.
in because companies are looking for like they have to replace the labor at a point. It's like I think about like the ESPN layoffs. Like the ESPN didn't cut base level talent from their roster. They went and got the people who have been there for the Jeff Van Gundy's and the Mark Jacksons, the Steve Breers, the people who have been there for decades and years. And I can only imagine the salary and the money that's expected from those people. But they still have 24 hours of airtime they have to fill. So they expect the Mina Kimes, the Swagoo, the Dan Orlovskis, the new guard to take over. Yeah. Because they're being paid, I mean, I assume, significantly less than people who've been with the company for years and decades. So I'd assume in this idea, they're not just cutting the cut. If these companies are looking to save revenue, they're probably going to look to see and trim the largest scale that we can get away without before having just to cut the bottom list of cheaper salaries. So if you're walking into it with a skill set and you go, hey, I'm just looking for work or I'm new to it, I don't need the big paycheck, I do think a lot of companies would be interested because they're saving money in the end.
Yeah, I think there's a dark side to what you're
well,
talking
of course,
about,
definitely.
I'm going to go and give you a disclaimer. This is just my opinion. But it seems like with a lot of the layoffs that, of course, there was great people in all of these layoffs. But I think it's also, there's a little bit of an aspect of, all of our peers are laying off in mass because of economic everything. You said trim the fat. I'm saying let's get rid of the people that we've been wanting to get rid of for a while.
Yeah.
I swear I think there's a part. Now I'm not saying all of it.
I have something to blame it on now.
Yeah. I don't want to say, of course, that that's everyone. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of great talented people. I know just actually that great talented people that were laid off. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of folks that maybe weren't as great and weren't as talented. Still valuable in their own way. But when I'm looking at some of these layoffs and I'm seeing the people and I'm like deep in the space, I'm like, I feel like there's a piece of this where the companies just wanted an excuse to get rid of the people they already wanted to get rid of.
Kind of imagine so.
Because the money aspect, like, the money's still there, for a lot of these, like, they're not losing a whole lot of money. Like they're losing a bit, but for example,
But
like
cutting headcount is the fastest way to realize revenue. So
Yeah.
if we're bleeding in shareholder meetings, instead of me trying to give you a new product that in 2 quarters will give us money and give us right side up, I can cut these people today. And by the time I come back to talk to you, I can show you, hey man, we got about 100,000, we got about $1 million. We have all these headcounts that we reduce. See,
Yeah.
please don't get mad at me, shareholders. I'm doing my job as an executive.
I get that, and I get the being beholden to the public markets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, looking at it like from how much money do we have to actually operate, though. The money is there for, especially with big tech, especially with Fang and all. The money's there. You know, even a lot of the non-Fang folks, they're still making a significant amount of money. It's just more so like this is what you do in economic
Yeah,
difficult time.
absolutely.
And like you said, we're publicly traded.
Mm-hmm.
All of these FANG companies are, and a lot of these people on the list, they're all publicly traded. So we have to show shareholders that we're responding in some sort of
We're
way.
responding. This is risk adverse.
I get it, but a lot of these companies, a lot of these FANG companies, they're still doing acquisitions.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
they're still spending hundreds of millions of dollars on other things.
I think that Xbox or Microsoft Activision acquisition finally went through too.
Did they?
Yeah, I know they held it up for some time because they were concerned of the monopoly that would come as a result of Microsoft like owning Call of Duty and owning those different things. But from what I remember, it looked like they assured Sony that they would still allow Call of Duty and their other platform, other games to be cross-platform and to be released on each platform. They weren't just going to hold it for themselves. Because you imagine, you know how much money Sony would lose in that moment.
It's a lot of money.
But
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
They're still people are still being acquired. Companies are still being bought.
It's a lot going on. It's just one of those weird economic things that I think people have to do.
Yeah.
Now, when I start seeing people not making money anymore, like the revenue's dropping dramatically.
When you say that, do you mean from an enterprise perspective or from a people perspective?
I mean, from an enterprise perspective, like these companies, like if their sales start dramatically dropping or their revenue starts dramatically dropping, then I'll be like, okay, cool. But percentages here and there, a few percents here and there,
Not enough to move the needle.
it's not as huge of a deal. Like they're still selling, they're still making money, revenue's still flowing. Yeah, but if that does happen, and I do see that start to decline in a major way, then at that point I would be much more worried.
Yeah,
Because then it's just like everything's going down.
exactly. But then again, that's to the point. This is the time to find your stakes, to refine your personal weapons from a intellectual. Refine your mind, brother. Don't
Yeah,
you
just
find
get-
it suspicious?
just get good.
Yeah,
It's
don't
time
you
to
find
get
it
good.
suspicious that at these times? Never mind. But yeah, important things.
Anyway, I think we're almost at an hour.
Yeah.
Probably a good time to cut it. If y'all are hearing anything or interested in sharing anything you want us to discuss on the pod, go ahead and leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff.
Share.
Share, yeah. We
Share it.
appreciate it. And we'll see you guys in the next video.
Absolutely.